Step closer to game day and Clemson on Friday night. It is Thursday, Locked On Syracuse Podcast, and we're going to start previewing Clemson, give you guys our insight on how they match up against Syracuse and get closer to this game, give your keys on this matchup, and a little bit more on this episode of the Locked On Syracuse Podcast.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every single weekday. We are here with you guys throughout football season, getting closer to basketball season as well. Any recruiting news, we're here with you too. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and you can find us on YouTube now as well. Subscribe to the show there if you haven't already. Also, check us out on Twitter at @LO_Syracuse, always tweeting out breaking news, Syracuse related, and getting you our thoughts on the game, live tweeting those as they happen. In the game this week as Clemson, and Ty, I've started digging into Clemson a little bit more. By the numbers,
Clemson's been on the timeline a lot this week. I mean, so we're recording this Wednesday night, and it's the, what is this now, 4-year anniversary of the big upset? Wow, it's been 4 years since that. So anyone that was a freshman has already graduated, and that means we're coming closer and closer to your birthday. So by the time people start listening to this, I'll be the first to wish you a happy birthday now. It's a little premature here, but by the time people start listening to it, it will be your birthday. So if you are listening to this, tweet to happy birthday, because it is his birthday by the time your ears are consuming this right now.
I appreciate that. As you joked yesterday, it's also 4 years of our friendship, kind of, which
it pretty much is. Yeah. This is like,
it's amazing.
Whenever I see that video on the timeline, that is going to be, to me, the banner moment. That is the starting date of our friendship.
Yeah, we knew each other before then, but we didn't really know
each other. Yeah.
Clemson beat Syracuse, and we were on Castle Court together. It was a good time.
I just remember it turned midnight, and we were like, "Oh, it's Tim's birthday now," and then he chugged a beer or something like that, and it was a good time had by all.
Which is funny because I look back, they were 20-point dogs, I think, or maybe 23 or 24-point dogs when they played Clemson that time around. Here they are, 14-point dogs. The line has fluctuated a little bit over on BetOnline.ag, but it's easy to forget about this, but I don't know if you remember this. They were 47-point dogs last year. Now, that was on the road in Clemson.
Yes.
But they were legit 47-point dogs. So just to put in perspective,
and
how they've come and how bad last year was. And obviously, I think that's also shined some light on where Clemson is at. And as I started to say, when you dig into the numbers here, if you take away the fact that it is Clemson and it's Dabo Swinney, and we know the history of this program, especially recently, this is really just a pretty average football team so far, especially on the offensive end. Basically, the story of Clemson is very good defense still and very lackluster offense to this point in the season.
Well, I would say the offensive and defensive units are on completely polar opposite points right now. I mean, you look at some of the passing numbers, the rushing numbers for this Clemson team, passing-wise, 114th in the country out of 130 teams. Let that settle in. Like, they're sitting at like UConn, UMass, Old Dominion levels right there. But defensively, they're one of the top 5 in the country. I mean, I saw David Hale, actually, he put out a great stat, all right? 5 teams right now are allowing less than 1 point per drive. Georgia, Cincy, Iowa, and San Diego State. Those 4 are a combined 22-0 and all ranked. Then you got Clemson. They're the odd man out of that group, but they are still a top 5 caliber defense, and that's not something that Syracuse should be taking lightly this week.
Yeah, so total defense right now, if you go off that number on NCAA.com, 20th in the country. Now, Syracuse is 22nd in the nation in total defense, and I think it is a legit good defense that Clemson has. I know that's not really a hot take. I mean, they only allowed Georgia to have 10 points on them. Remember, that was the big game.
7 were pick 6, too.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
You look at regulation. I have the numbers out in front of me because I was very curious to see. So their scoring defense is 2nd. So total defense takes into account how many yards you allow, right? But scoring defense is how many points you allow. And at the end of the day, the scoring defense probably a little more pertinent. So regulation, here's how many points they've allowed in each game so far this season. I threw the South Carolina State game out. 3 against Georgia, 8 against Georgia Tech, 14 against NC State, 13 against BC. They haven't allowed more than 2 touchdowns in regulation in a single game this season.
Right.
That's unbelievable.
And that's a good point because they lost to NC State in overtime, which I think was 27 points they ended up putting up, which would be their highest if you want to go about it that way. But yeah, scoring defense tied for second. They're also pretty good at stopping the run, 21st in the country, which is especially imperative now when you're talking about how they match up against Syracuse. You bring up how their passing offense, I saw 113, 114, basically wherever you look. Syracuse is basically right next to them in that category, passing offense-wise. Cuse checks in right around 115. So it's 2 offenses. And the more I dig into these numbers, the more that under started to be less shocking to me because you think about, all right, 2 offenses that like to run the football and 2 offenses that really can't pass the football and really don't score a ton. And then it's 2 very good defenses. This is a matchup of a Syracuse defense that, despite allowing a lot of points in the past couple of weeks, as I said, still 22nd in the country. And then Clemson, like we said, has been very good defensively. Really, no matter how you look at defensive metrics, whichever one you look at, Clemson has been a very good defensive team. And honestly, just as good as they normally are. It's just their offense has been so bad.
Like if Trevor Lawrence did the unthinkable and came back this season, I mean, you're looking at a national championship contender again with this Clemson team. And Travis Etienne, if he was back again, this national championship contender once again. And that's just not the case. They don't have the horses that they used to have offensively. DJ Uyunglele has been very underwhelming. I mean, he's missing guys.
Nice job on the name, though. It's a tough name. I wasn't going to try it.
So now you get to just call him DJ. I've done the brunt work here for you. Happy birthday. That's
right. DJU. I'll go with that.
Or Big Cinco, that some people call him as well. But he hasn't been Trevor Lawrence. He hasn't. And maybe some people expected him to provide some sort of spark. At the end of the day, he's a 5-star. You thought he'd be something.
Right.
And you saw it even last year against Notre Dame. Now, here's my concern, all right? At some point, this Clemson offense is going to pop, right? Like, there has to be one game at some point where they figure everything out and just put it all together. And I'm worried it might be against this Syracuse unit that has started to let up some big plays and some home run shots. And the more and more I look at it, at the end of the day, I still see Justin Ross on that roster. So he's a guy who had his way with Syracuse in the past.
Yeah, and he's coming off a concussion, but it looks like, as we're talking right now, he is going to play in this game, which would be big. And it's worth noting, too, that's part of the reason why they have struggled, at least offensively, is they have been down some players. They lost a lot of key players in that Georgia game, starting to get healthier at this stage of the season, coming off a bye week. I would expect Justin Ross to be out there. And I think you said it there. That's the fear for me. Is this the game where Clemson figures it out? Because it would make sense, right? Off a bye week. Syracuse also on a short week, if you want to look at it that way. I mean, Clemson has basically gotten double the days to prepare that Syracuse has for this game. We've always played Clemson a little bit better than maybe we should. And it is at home for the Orange. You expect a pretty good crowd. I like the way Syracuse is playing coming in. But the part that really scares me is the fact that Clemson is coming off a bye and they haven't had that game yet where they put it all together.
And this makes sense, too. We kind of talked about it yesterday. Not only are they coming off the bye, but you look the rest of the way, is this Dabo's sort of Super Bowl for the rest of the way? Because this is the team that has given you fits over time. And you think that doesn't piss them off a little bit, that little old Syracuse, it gives them a little jab every once in a while, they punch back? I think that pisses him off. And I don't think he wants to. I think he wants to send a message, make a statement in this game against the Orange. And I don't want to see a pissed off Clemson team. Let's put it that way.
No. And they still have a lot to play for. They can still win an ACC championship. I haven't looked at BetOnline.ag, but I would say they're right up there as a favorite maybe to still win that when you factor in they've only lost one ACC game. It was to NC State. They beat BC, which wasn't a convincing win. Again, they kind of did in ugly fashion, just as they did with Georgia Tech, where they're relying on their defense. But if this game becomes ugly, normally I feel like that would favor Syracuse. It weirdly kind of favors Clemson, I think, in this instance.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's just that's the way
I heard you start to say that. I'm like, I don't know where he's going with this. But then I thought about it a little bit, and I think you're right. I think that would favor Clemson, which is not a good thing because Syracuse,
Right.
usually in those games, when you are a big underdog, if you can make it ugly, you give yourself a chance. But I think you're right. I think in this case, the defense on the other side is just too good.
All right, guys. So we're going to get into more of Clemson, how they match up against Syracuse in just a little bit. But there are a few things in life that just aren't fun to talk about. One of them is excessive sweating. You know, when you're sweating through your shirts for no reason, it's really embarrassing. If you got a big speech coming up, if you're going out on a big date, something like that. Well, I know it's not life or death, but there are much worse problems in the world, yes. But let's be honest, in the moment, it feels like a big deal. Nobody likes to pit out during that important speech, interview, or first date. God forbid the first date. I'd much rather not worry about it, and that's why I use SweatBlock antiperspirant wipes. They are very easy to use, very easy to purchase online. Doctor created, doctor recommended. They work for up to 7 days per use. They're dry shirt guaranteed. If SweatBlock doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back, and they have been featured and tested on the Rachel Ray Show by firefighters before. Also been a bestseller on Amazon for the past 10 years with over 13,000 reviews. They're currently number one in Amazon's antiperspirant category. It is SweatBlock's antiperspirant wipes. I know that you guys have run into this problem before. I know we're kind of getting out of the summer phase right now, especially up in Syracuse, but it's always good to have those SweatBlock wipes handy if you have something big coming up. If you or someone you love is dealing with this, you have to check out SweatBlock. Get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code LOCKEDON or at Amazon or local CVS. All right, so continuing with how Syracuse matches up here against Clemson, I don't think it's like a good matchup, a bad matchup for Syracuse the more I dug into it, because really what worries me the most is the fact that maybe we just haven't seen the true Clemson yet. Yeah. And the question that would ultimately determine this game is that if Clemson comes out of the bye week, guns blazing, ready to go, and they come into the Dome and they put up a couple touchdowns on Syracuse early, we could run into a buzzsaw here. But the counterpoint is, if they haven't done it so far this year, it doesn't seem like they would do it against Syracuse on the road. Pretty tough environment to play, a place they've struggled, and against a very good defense that, on one hand, Syracuse has been a little banged up. Maybe they get healthier for this game as well.
That's the hope, especially in the running back room. Abdul Adams is a guy that you definitely want to see out on the field just to give a little bit of rest to Sean Tucker, because we've talked about it. Sean Tucker, you need to feed him the ball. You just need to get the running game going. And while Sean Tucker's a special back, I still think Abdul Adams is a solid back. I'm not sold on Cooper Lutz yet. So you still need to have another option. And boy, wouldn't it be nice to have Jarvion Howard right about now too, to have even more security in that regard as well. But yeah, you just worry about what happens if Clemson gets the ball first and marches down the field and scores a touchdown on that first drive. You almost feel inclined to call the ball game over because that defense is so good on the other side.
Right, and it's also important how Syracuse calls plays in this game against Clemson. This is going to be the best defense probably they have seen so far, and they've seen some decent ones so far.
They've seen flimsy defenses. I think there's some that they don't break. Yeah. They bend a little bit. They don't break. But this team doesn't bend defensively. And that's the thing that worries me.
A key stat that I noticed is, I mean, we know if you've watched Syracuse, they struggle in the red zone offensively. This year, it's been a little bit better. They're tied for 71st in the nation in red zone offense. But even if you want to go to more of the short yardage areas, those key plays, third down offense, 100th in the country, fourth down offense, 100th in the country for the Orange in both those categories. So that's an indictment on the play calling. That's an indictment on not getting those winning plays. You look at the flip side, Clemson, sixth best red zone defense in the country. So you're going to have to score in the red zone if you want to pull off an upset here. You're going to have to capitalize. Andre Smith's not been getting it done to the degree we normally expect from him. I don't know if that means going for it more on fourth downs. I know that's been a hot topic lately, but I look at those numbers, and that's an area that scares me when I consider that when Syracuse does get into the red zone, they haven't been capitalizing, and now they go against a really good defense who happens to be even better when it's in those short yardage red zone situations.
Yeah, and I'd like to see what those numbers look like the last 3 weeks, too, when it's been Garrett Shrader, because I think they've been much better in the red zone. But you talk about it, third down and fourth down, if they're going for it on short yardage situations like that, this Clemson defense, their front seven does not lose in the trenches very often. I mean, you look at, and I'm sure Anthony DeBundo is going to outline this perfectly for us on tomorrow's show, but some of these line yards and stuff rates, I mean, it is Clemson, Georgia, Penn State, and Iowa, and they are in a league of their own in terms of stuffing you at the point of attack. So you're not going to be able to have the same sort of success. I'm very intrigued because we're going to have this on the show tomorrow. What is Prize Picks' number on Sean Tucker for his rushing? I'm really intrigued by that because I think, listen, he's a talented back and he has a chance to really make a name for himself in this game. It's going to be a Friday night. It's a big game on TV this week. But if he struggles, and let's say Garrett Shrader, because I don't think Garrett Shrader is going to have the same rushing success against this Clemson team. You see him run some of those plays up the middle, and I don't think that's going to be there because he breaks through a couple arm tackles, but an arm tackle from Wake Forest is a lot different than an arm tackle from Clemson.
Yeah, the other thing is, and Dino brought this up on the coaches show, which is Wednesday night as of us recording this. He was saying, I don't know what it is, but in this series, typically a quarterback has been knocked out. Now, you obviously don't hope for that, but we know, and I don't even have to go down the list. Lawrence, Kelly Bryant, Dungy was knocked out the first time Dino went down there. So I hope Garrett Shrader doesn't get knocked out, but it makes you sort of rack your brain that this could be the time it happens because Clemson
it shows the physicality of the series too. And I think it shows that these teams kind of don't like each other because obviously from the Syracuse perspective, Clemson has the X on their back, right? And on the Clemson perspective, this is little brother that's starting to punch back a little bit at you from time to time. And you don't like that. You want to assert your dominance.
So I did some research. Dino Babers as a 14-point dog at home, at Syracuse, is 4-4 against the spread so far, but he does have 2 wins, and those are 2 famous wins. Virginia Tech in his first year, they were 20-point dogs. Clemson, 23-point dogs when they won that game 4 years ago that we've been talking about. 2019, when it was a big game that we thought might be game day, and then it wasn't, it ended up actually being 27-point dogs. They did not cover that game, lost 41-6 to Clemson at home that year. And then a couple other games they have covered where they've been 2 touchdown underdogs at home were last year. BC plus 14, they covered, lost by 3. And NC State late in the year, they were 15-point dogs. They covered and ended up losing by 6 in that game. And you could also make the case, Dino's been pretty good on Friday nights. Liberty this year, the Clemson game 4 years ago. It feels like they do play decently well. Now, the Louisville game was one bad example of that.
That was one of the worst games we've seen in the Dino Babers era.
Right. So give and a take there, but you could make a case that, Dino is a guy to target when they are big underdogs, or Syracuse is a team to target when they're big underdogs at home. And they've also been a team to target when they played against Clemson. They've usually covered. And the other thing is Syracuse right now is 5-1 against the spread on the season. They've covered 5 times. That's the best record in the country, or tied for the best record. Clemson is 0-5 against the spread because they played one less game because of the bye week last week. Worst record in the country. So that actually probably scares me more than anything because I just feel like it has to even out this week. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, you start to regress back to the mean a little. Again, at the end of the day, 5-1 against the spread does not mean you're one spread cover away from bowl eligibility.
No.
Syracuse is still a team that's lost a fair share of football games this season. So I look at it as, has Syracuse outkicked their coverage a little bit this year? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, you're a 500 team right now. You still have a lot of work to do, and you need to start winning these football games because you took Wake Forest down to the wire. You took Florida State down to the wire. Those are games that you have to start winning now. And I don't know if you play a similar type of game like that against Clemson, I don't know if you're going to win. If you let the Tigers hang around and you prolong this thing, guess what? Variance tells you that as you stretch things out, things go back to where they should be, back to normal, regression to the mean. And if you do that against Clemson, guess what? They're the better team than you right now. Even though they have a couple losses, they're still Clemson. Everyone talks about how good this Georgia team is right now, right? Clemson played them really damn tough that first
Neutral
week.
site. Yeah.
They didn't let that offense score. And even though I know the Bulldogs have a fantastic defense, the offense has put up some points lately too. So it just shows that this Clemson team, even though they've had their hiccups, they're still for real in my eyes.
Yeah. All right, we're going to get into some interesting Garrett Shrader numbers in just a second. Before that, I want to remind you guys this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. So why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? Those questions that no one knows the answers to, you just kind of smile and nod along to when you're talking to the person behind the counter. You don't have to deal with that anymore. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money like I usually do when going to rockauto.com. Why choose 30, 50% more in prices, even 100% more sometimes for the same parts. Also, typically when you go to the brick and mortar store, they have to order the parts. You can just skip that step right now. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Prices are reliably low, very easy to use interface. So go to rockauto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Again, put Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need. Just visit rockauto.com.
We're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back for another football season. And as always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. They've got a new updated site and interface with even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. So head on over to the website or use your phone to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just don't forget to use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive that 50% welcome bonus. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. And we even give you a prop shop every single week where we go through the betonline.ag. We give you the best stuff and their odds for the upcoming game and tell you what side you might want to lean on as well. So BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, so we've been teasing this week a little bit, but you got some good nuggets here on Garrett Shrader, some good stats on how he is play action versus not play action. And I believe, where'd you get this? PFF mostly?
This is all PFF data, yep.
Okay, so fire away. What do you got?
All right, so Garrett Shrader, what have we been telling people? That's what now, 3 weeks? I think we've been on the mountaintop screaming this for Garrett Shrader, how to use Garrett Shrader.
Definitely you, yep.
Cut the field in half. Get him out of the pocket. Use play action with him. And here we are with some Garrett Shrader play action numbers. So, over the course of the season there, about a third of his drops have been play action dropbacks. He is 22 for 31, a 71% completion percentage. Without play action, he drops to 29 of 57, a 51% completion percentage. That's a huge drop-off right there.
Yeah.
A 20% drop-off. He's thrown for 239 yards versus the 388 on non-play action, but that obviously a product of the amount of plays and all that stuff. 7.7 yards per attempt on play action passes, and he's thrown for 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, which matches the numbers that he has on non-play action. And when the sample size is 26 passes fewer on play action throws, I think that tells you a little bit of something. And also, if you look at his rushing grade as well in PFF, he goes from an 88.7 off of play action to an 81.3, and his QBR 101.4 on play action.
Okay.
Versus a 77.2 on non-play action. I mean, these are steep drop-offs here. And when you get him and you've got the threat of Sean Tucker, we talked about this in the Wake Forest game. The Demon Deacons defense had zero idea who had the ball. Zero idea. When there was play action, read options, all that stuff. They could not have been more confused. I don't think that's going to be the same case against Clemson, but these numbers are pretty clear that you have to get him out of the pocket, run some play action stuff with him, because it makes him a better thrower of the football, as well as it makes the offense as a whole better running the football.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting for Sterling Gilbert in the Syracuse offense and Garrett Shrader, the whole yard of it, because, you know, I'm not like standing up for Gilbert, but I think out of the two of us, you've been a little bit more sort of easier to criticize him so far this year. And I don't think he's been good, but I think they have been putting up points. Now, can they continue it against a Clemson team that no one has been able to put up points on? Even Georgia hasn't been able to score a touchdown on them for a full game. Syracuse is at home in this game, but I don't know. I mean, this is going to be really a litmus test for the Syracuse offense. And by this stage of the Garrett Shrader timeline, and what is this now? I guess his fourth start, if I'm doing, or maybe third start that he has made.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, because Liberty started.
Liberty
So,
was the first.
all right,
Yep.
if you're Gilbert, you've seen this stuff. Like, you don't even have to go to the analytics. You probably picked up on some trends. Like, all right, play action is where we can get Garrett rolling. Maybe rolling him outside the pocket is good for him as well. You're dipping more into the playbook with him because you've had more time to prepare for it. You're not worrying about Tommy DeVito and second team reps. This is really no excuses except for the fact that the team on the other side of you is one of the best defenses in the country.
And not just that, but I mean, you say he's had 4 weeks. No, he's had almost a year now to know how to build a playbook surrounding Garrett Shrader.
Yeah,
He
well,
committed in
the only
December.
thing I'll say about that is they were also focusing on Tommy for a huge chunk
Right,
of
but
the offseason.
you don't think that they had something in their back pocket?
No, they did.
There
but
are
it's
plays in the
tougher
playbook
when
for
you're doing
both.
two.
I
Yeah.
get that. But like look at every single I think the better example of this is what happens in the NFL. When you draft a rookie quarterback, but also have that placeholder to a degree. Like you don't think the San Francisco 49ers had stuff for Trey Lance all season long? Because they have. Same thing with the Bears and Justin Fields and even with the Patriots when they were going through the Cam Newton versus Mac Jones stuff. Like there is stuff. You built that playbook the day you let that guy at their back position enter your program. And that's the problem.
Well, I would also say, not to just constantly be defending Sterling Gilbert here, but I would also say that maybe part of this is Garrett Shrader learning how this offense works and learning, okay, when I have Anthony Quilley out on the right side and he's one-on-one, this is what he's going to do because he just hasn't played with these guys. He hasn't played. And he's talked tons about that. Shrader himself, when we were in the offseason, about how he was behind the 8 ball because it's a complex offense and he didn't have knowledge of it. And he's only been in it for 1 year compared to DeVito's 4 or 5 or whatever. So maybe it is also partially just Garrett Shrader not being up to speed. And even you'd have to consider they're working in Kalen Ellis. There's been some sort of younger guys that have been trying to get into the fold here. I heard Dino say something tonight on the show about Damian Alford. He was asked, why isn't he playing more? And basically his answer, to paraphrase, was Damian Alford's going to be really good someday for us, but right now he doesn't know the full scope of the playbook, and he's a physical guy, but he's just got to get a little more experience back there.
And another part of that too is, I mean, is Garrett Shrader. How much is he at fault for some of these timeouts with the play clock winding down, with not getting that 2-point conversion play off in time? Is he at fault? Is he processing things a little bit slower when he's getting the play call? So, yeah, I'm on the mountaintop screaming at Sterling Gilbert, but it might be Shrader too. That's a little bit slow to process this stuff from the time he gets the play to how he delivers it in the huddle to how he gets up and actually has to get the snap off too.
Right. And by the way, Schrader's numbers, 73.6 PFF grade this week. Another good grade, but it's very inflated based on his running grade. He was an 80.7 running grade on PFF. And then another week where you can see the numbers really dip when he's under pressure. This past week against Wake, 46.7 grade when he's under pressure versus a 75.9 grade when he's not under pressure. That's passing, I think, mostly. You'd have to wonder. What I see from Garrett Shrader is when he gets under pressure, he's scrambling, he's running for yards most of the time. Actually, a lot of his scrambles went for first downs. It was pretty remarkable this past game. But he's not throwing the ball under pressure a whole lot. And I saw that more when he first came in against Liberty. He was taking more shots in the pocket. I don't know if that's been by choice. I also don't really know if he's 100% healthy after the way he ended last game as well.
And that scares the hell out of me. Those pressure things that you bring up, because guess how many guys, I would guess if you had to set the over-under on how many times Clemson blitzes in this game, I'd set it at like 5.5. I mean, seriously, they're not going to need to send guys to get pressure. They can send 4, spy a linebacker on Garrett Shrader, and they could be good to go. I mean, I think when you have supreme talent like Clemson has on the defensive side of the football, they, I think, are a really, really tough matchup for Syracuse because the trenches, they're going to overwhelm Syracuse with that stuff. They've got good, experienced linebackers that have won championships with this team. So that's what I'm worried about, is the matchup might not be there for Syracuse. And Garrett Shrader, he could struggle because a lot of those things that maybe he had a step on against Wake, he had a step on against Liberty, he's not going to have that step on a team like Clemson. And they're going to be able to only rush 4 and get to him and put pressure in his face. And guess what? There's going to be a linebacker spying on him right away to take him down once he does start to scramble.
Yeah. All right, well, that is part one of the Clemson preview. If you are listening on Thursday morning, we will probably drop another Clemson preview where we make picks for the game, give you our prop shop, debug those digits. That'll probably be out like Thursday afternoon. So maybe just grab some lunch and then come back and check your podcast feeds in a little bit. You can also find us on YouTube. We thank you guys for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen of the day every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on Twitter as well at LO_Syracuse. And for your second listen of the day, maybe check out Locked On ACC. I know they did some power rankings this week. Aren't you on, Ty, on Thursday?
I'm on today. I am on today. Okay. Yes, well, we were talking.
If you're not sick of Ty, which I happen to not be sick of him after 4 years of friendship, apparently, then check out Locked On ACC today.
Happy friendiversary. It feels like the Facebook thing, right? Like it comes up on Facebook or whatever. Your friendiversary with people. I don't know. I haven't checked Facebook
that's the only reason
3 years.
Right. That's the only reason I'll get any birthday wishes tomorrow is because of Facebook. I know people joke about that when it went down. No one's going to know when your birthday is now. But all right, well, we're rambling now. But thanks for listening to this Thursday episode, first Thursday episode. And we'll have our full Clemson